The rain had been falling for hours on the dusty colony world of Erixus. The small alien village, built from stone and bone, was silent except for the sound of the storm. Only one place still had light, a small workshop at the edge of the village where a human named Eli Voss worked alone. His hands were covered in oil and metal dust. He fixed broken tools for the villagers, like tools they never thanked him for. To them, he was an outsider, a man from the same race that had once brought war to their planet. But Eli didn't care about their fear. He only cared about building, repairing, and creating. Machines made sense. People didn't. That night, the silence was broken by hurried footsteps. The door burst open and a group of aliens entered, tall, thin beings with silver eyes and glowing blue skin. In their arms, they carried a child, maybe 8 years old. The child's right arm was missing, the wound covered in rough bandages made of bark. "She is dying," one of them shouted. "You are a metal worker. Fix her." Eli froze. He wasn't a doctor, but when he saw the small girl's trembling body and the fear in her eyes, something inside him shifted. "What happened?" he asked quietly. "She fell from the cliff. The bone healers can't help her. You what, make metal things, make her arm." The alien's words were half anger, half desperation. Their eyes burned with hatred, yet they were begging him. Eli looked at the child. She was shivering, whispering in a language he barely understood. He knelt beside her and touched her forehead. "Easy, little one," he said softly. "You're going to be all right," the villagers muttered in fear. "He touches her. It's forbidden. He'll curse her with human iron." Eli ignored them. He picked up his tools and turned to his workbench. Sparks flew as he began to shape metal, mixing it with bits of alien crystal that glowed faintly under the lamplight. He didn't sleep. He didn't stop. The room filled with the sound of cutting, welding, shaping. Hours passed. The child's breathing grew weaker. Eli's hands trembled, but he kept going. He crafted a limb, light, elegant, almost alive. He had never seen anything like it before, but somehow, he knew exactly what to do. The villagers stayed at a distance, whispering, "Humans are cursed. He's making her into one of them. If she dies, it's his fault." Eli heard every word but said nothing. When dawn came, the rain stopped. The sky turned pale orange and the storm clouds drifted away. Finally, he attached the limb, a mix of metal, crystal, and living fiber. It pulsed softly with energy. The child gasped as life returned to her veins. Her new arm twitched, then opened, fingers spreading in the morning light. The workshop went silent. No one spoke. The little girl looked at Eli, then raised her new arm and touched his cheek with the cold, glowing fingers. "It moves," she whispered. "It feels warm." Eli smiled faintly. "That's because it's yours now," he said. For the first time, the aliens saw something they didn't expect. A human helping, not harming. A few of them looked away, ashamed. Others stared, confused and afraid. The child sat up. Her eyes shimmered with tears. She tried to stand, and stumbled into Eli's arms. The villagers gasped again. To them, this was unthinkable. An alien child touching a human without fear. "She's cursed now," one muttered. "She's blessed," another whispered. Eli helped her stand properly, steadying her with a gentle hand. "You'll need to learn to move again," he said softly. "But you're stronger than you think." The girl smiled shyly. "Thank you." "Human." Her voice was small, but it carried through the workshop like sunlight breaking through clouds. Outside, the villagers slowly began to disperse. Some still glared. Some were silent, but a few paused, glancing back at the human and the little girl standing side by side. When the last of them left, Eli sat down on the bench, exhausted. The child was asleep beside him, her new arm glowing softly in rhythm with her heartbeat. He looked at her and thought, "She's just a kid. Why would anyone be afraid of her?" Outside, the wind had gone quiet. But somewhere in the dark sky above, something stirred, a shimmer of silver lights like ships moving behind the clouds. Eli didn't notice them. Not yet, but the villagers did. They looked up and whispered in fear. "The royal lights." "The Queen's fleet," someone said. "She will come for the child." Eli stayed in his workshop, unaware that his small act of kindness had changed everything. The child he had saved was no ordinary orphan. And soon the Queen herself would come, not to thank him, but to question why a human dared to touch royal blood. The night came again, heavy and strange over the village of Arixis. The storm was gone, but the air still carried tension. The villagers whispered to one another as they passed by the human's workshop, their glowing eyes full of unease. The story of the human who healed a broken child had already spread. Every home was talking about it. Some called it a miracle, others called it a curse. Inside the small workshop, Eli sat beside the sleeping child. The new limb shimmered faintly under the lantern light, small pulses of blue energy running through the metal-like veins. It was alive now, in a way that even Eli couldn't explain. He looked down at her peaceful face and sighed. "You'll be fine now," he whispered, more to himself than to her. Outside, a sound broke the silence. Footsteps, then a hard knock on the door. Eli stood up, wiping his hands on a cloth. When he opened the door, 3 alien guards stood there. Their armor glowed with the royal crest and a mark of the Queen's house. "Human," one of them said, his voice sharp and cold. "You will come with us," Eli frowned. "The girl needs rest," he replied calmly. "The Queen has heard what you did," the guard continued. "You have touched royal blood. That is forbidden by the sacred code." Eli looked back at the sleeping child, then again at the soldiers. "I didn't touch royalty," he said quietly. "I helped a child who was bleeding to death. That's all." The lead guard stepped forward, raising his weapon. "You will answer before the Queen herself." "If you refuse," Eli interrupted. "If helping a child is a crime," he said firmly, "then yes, I'll answer to your Queen." For a moment, no one spoke. The guards seemed surprised by his calmness. No fear, no pleading, just simple words that carried strength. They turned without another word and disappeared into the night, leaving Eli alone again. But the whispers outside grew louder. "He will be taken to the palace. They'll burn him. No human survives meeting the Queen." Eli closed the door and looked at the sleeping girl once more. She stirred slightly, whispering something in her alien tongue. He couldn't understand it, but the word "thank you" was clear enough. He smiled faintly. "Sleep easy, kid. You've got more courage than this whole planet." By midnight, strange lights danced above the village. Silver ships moved across the sky in complete silence, their glow reflecting on the wet ground. The villagers came out of their homes, falling to their knees, heads bowed low. The royal fleet had arrived. Eli watched from his workshop window, arms crossed. He didn't bow. He didn't hide. He only muttered, "Guess the Queen doesn't like waiting." Moments later, a deep hum shook the air, a royal cruiser descending near the village square. Soldiers poured out, forming a line. At the center stood a tall figure covered in a shimmering black cloak. Even from a distance, Eli could tell. This was no ordinary envoy. "The Queen herself," a villager gasped. "She came in person," Eli's brows lifted. "All this for one arm?" he whispered under his breath. The Queen stepped forward, her movements slow and graceful. Her presence made the air feel heavier. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but carried power like thunder behind glass. "Where is the human who crafted the forbidden limb?" The crowd turned. Dozens of glowing eyes shifted toward Eli's workshop. Eli didn't move. He didn't speak. He simply opened his door and stepped outside, the rainwater glistening under the ship's light. His shirt was still marked with oil, his eyes tired but steady. "I'm right here," he said. The Queen turned toward him. For a moment, her expression softened, almost unnoticeable, as her gaze fell upon the little girl standing behind Eli's legs. The child, still weak but awake, raised her new metal arm and waved. "Mother," she whispered. The entire crowd gasped. Eli froze. "Mother?" The Queen's eyes widened, and for a single second her calm broke. She took a sharp breath and stepped closer. The child ran to her, and the Queen knelt, touching the glowing arm gently, her lips trembling. "This arm, it lives," she whispered. The villagers fell silent, watching their ruler and the human standing side by side in the soft light. Eli's voice broke the silence. "I didn't know she was—" The Queen lifted her gaze, eyes shimmering. "You didn't need to know. You simply helped." Eli nodded slowly. "Someone had to." The Queen looked at him for a long moment, as if searching for something in his face. Fear, greed, or lies. But she found none. Only quiet humanity. Finally, she stood and said softly, "Then you will come with me, human. For I must understand why you did this." Eli looked down at the little girl smiling up at him and sighed. "All right," he said. "Lead the way." The queen turned toward her ship and Eli followed. Behind them, the villagers bowed again, but this time, not out of fear, out of confusion, and the first flicker of respect. The royal cruiser moved through the night like a floating shadow, its silver hull glowing softly under the twin moons of Eryxis. Inside, everything was quiet. Only the soft hum of alien machinery filled the air. Eli sat at the edge of a long corridor, his wrists unchained, his eyes calm. Two guards stood near him, alert but curious. They didn't understand this human who didn't beg, didn't speak, didn't look afraid. He had been inside alien ships before, during the war. But this was different. There was no rage, no soldiers shouting, only silence and the faint scent of something like flowers and lightning. At the far end of the corridor, tall doors opened with a soft hiss. A royal attendant bowed and said, "Her Majesty will see you now." Eli rose slowly and followed. The hall beyond was vast, lined with glowing vines and silver banners. At its center sat the Queen of Eryxis, tall and radiant, her skin faintly golden under the lights. Her eyes, bright like liquid silver, studied him in silence. Beside her stood the child, the one he had saved. She was dressed now in royal silk, her new arm shining gently with the same pulse of life as before. When she saw Eli, she smiled shyly and lifted the arm. "See, Mother?" she said softly. "It doesn't hurt anymore." The Queen's expression changed. A small, sad smile that disappeared too quickly. She turned her gaze to Eli. "You built this," she said quietly. Eli nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty." "You knew it was forbidden for humans to touch royal blood." He looked at the child, then back at her. "I didn't know who she was," he said. "I only saw a child who needed help." The Queen's eyes lingered on him. "You risked death for someone not of your kind." Eli shrugged. "Where I come from, we fix what's broken. Doesn't matter who it belongs to." Her silver eyes narrowed slightly. "That is not how this world works, human." "I noticed," he said with a faint smile. The guards tensed at his tone, but the Queen raised her hand. "Leave us," she commanded. The guards hesitated, then bowed and stepped out of the chamber, leaving the human alone with the Queen and her daughter. The silence grew heavier. The Queen rose from her throne, the fabric of her gown flowing like liquid glass as she stepped closer. "Tell me," she said softly, "why did you choose to save her? You could have walked away." Eli met her gaze without flinching. "Because I've seen too many children die for nothing." "I wasn't going to add one more to the list." Her eyes flickered with something, pain, maybe understanding. She turned away for a moment, looking toward the high window where the stars drifted slowly beyond the glass. "When humans came to this world," she began quietly, "they brought fire. They took our air mines, burned our forests. My people have not forgotten." Eli's voice was calm. "Neither have I. That's why I fix things instead of breaking them." The Queen turned back to him, studying his face again. He didn't look proud. He didn't even look angry. Just tired and real. "Finally," she said, "the limb you made, you saying it's more than metal. It responds to her heartbeat. It grows with her." "How did you make it?" Eli hesitated. "Honestly, I don't know. Your crystals, they reacted to my materials. It was like the arm wanted to live." The Queen's brows furrowed slightly. "That technology has been lost for centuries. Not even our best healers could do it." Eli scratched his chin. Maybe it wasn't about tech. Maybe it was about intent. "I didn't want to make a machine. I wanted to give her something she could feel." The Queen was silent for a long time. Then quietly she said, "Your kind has always been strange, human. You destroy and heal in the same breath." Eli smiled faintly. "We're complicated." The Queen almost smiled too, but she hid it quickly. "You understand this changes everything. The nobles will not accept that a human touched royal blood. Some already call for your death." Eli's tone didn't change. "Then I guess I'll die doing something right." The Queen blinked, not expecting that answer. For the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't felt since before the war. Respect. The child walked up to Eli, holding his hand with her metal fingers. "He's not bad, Mother. He fixed me." The Queen looked at their joined hands and her voice softened. "Yes, he did." Then her expression hardened again. "But peace has a price. And tomorrow, The council will decide your fate. Eli nodded slowly. Then I'll be there. As the guards led him away, the queen stood still, her eyes fixed on her daughter's glowing arm. That night, while the palace slept, she couldn't rest. In her mind replayed the human's words, "We fix what's broken." For the first time, she wondered, maybe that was what her world needed too. The dawn on Eryxis was pale and cold, the kind of light that made everything look fragile. From the high balcony of her palace, the queen stood silently, her silver robe fluttering in the morning wind. Below her, the alien city shimmered, towers of glass and stone rising like frozen waves. But her eyes were not on the horizon. They were fixed on the workshop the humans once destroyed years ago. Her thoughts kept circling back to one face, the human engineer, Eli Voss. The man who didn't bow, didn't beg, and yet built something even her royal healers could not. Behind her, the sound of small footsteps echoed. It was the child, her daughter, the one Eli had saved. The new arm shimmered with faint pulses of light as if alive. "Mother," she said softly, standing beside her. "Is he in trouble?" The queen closed her eyes for a moment. "Yes," she whispered. "And it is because of me." The girl tilted her head. "Why?" "Because long ago," the queen said slowly, "I believed that all humans only destroy. I forgot that some of them can create." She looked down at the child's glowing limb, the perfect mix of metal and life, and a memory broke open inside her. It had been years ago, back when the war between humans and her people was at its height. She had been younger, proud, certain that nothing could touch the royal family. Then one night, fire fell from the sky. Human warships descended on their outpost and explosions turned the forest into ashes. Amid the chaos, her daughter, just a baby then, had been caught in the blast. The healers tried everything. Alien medicine, crystal regeneration, energy grafts, nothing worked. The child survived, but her small arm was gone, and the queen never forgave herself. In rage, she declared humans monsters, banning all of them from the capital, forbidding any touch between the two races. That wound, her daughter's lost limb, had become a symbol of her hatred. And now, years later, the same limb had been remade by a human's hands. A knock came at the chamber door. "Enter," she said quietly. Her royal advisor stepped in, a tall alien with deep green eyes. "My queen," he said respectfully, "the council is ready. They demand the human's punishment be announced today." The queen turned slowly. "Punishment?" "Yes," he said firmly. "He violated the royal law. The people are afraid. If you spare him, they will question your rule." The queen's gaze hardened. "And if I punish him for saving my daughter, what will they call that?" The advisor hesitated. "Mercy is a weakness, Majesty." She stepped closer, her eyes glowing faintly. "No," she said softly. "It is the only strength that lasts." The advisor bowed his head, unsure how to answer. "Prepare the chamber," she said finally. "I will speak with the council myself." When he left, the queen stood still for a long moment, her heart torn between duty and truth. Then she turned to her daughter. "Stay here," she said gently. "Do not follow me," but the child frowned. "You're going to protect him, aren't you?" The queen smiled faintly. "I don't know yet." The little girl lifted her new metal hand, its faint light reflecting in her mother's eyes. "He made me whole again. You should too." The queen froze, the words cutting deep. Later that morning in the great council hall, dozens of nobles sat in a ring of silver thrones. Their voices were sharp and cruel. Humans cannot be trusted. He used forbidden craft. He touched the princess. That is treason. Eli stood in the center, calm but silent. He didn't defend himself. He only looked at the queen. Finally, she rose from her throne. Her presence silenced the hall. "This human," she said, her voice firm but clear, "did what none of you could. He gave life back to my daughter." The nobles shifted uneasily. One of them hissed, "He defied our sacred laws." The queen turned toward him. "So did I the day I let fear rule me." The hall fell silent. She looked back at Eli. "You didn't know who she was. You didn't ask for reward. You only helped." Eli nodded slightly. "That's all I wanted to do." The queen's gaze softened. "Then I owe you the truth." She faced the council. "This child's wound was my fault. I built my hatred on her pain, and now that hatred ends." The hall erupted in whispers. The queen raised her hand, silencing them. This human will not be punished, she declared. He will be honored. Eli blinked, surprised. The Queen looked straight at him. Because the limb he made healed more than a child. It healed a queen's heart. That night, when the palace quieted, the Queen stood once more by her window. Far below, she saw Eli walking the royal garden with her daughter, teaching her how to move her new fingers, laughing softly. For the first time in years, the Queen smiled, not as a ruler, but as a mother. And yet, in the dark above, the stars flickered strangely. Far away, a human warship drifted closer to the planet's orbit, unnoticed. Peace, it seemed, was never simple. The night sky over Eryxis was alive with silver lights. At first, the people thought it was another royal patrol, but then the lights multiplied. The patterns were sharp, military, human. High above the alien capital, a human warship hovered like a silent mountain of metal. Its engines rumbled faintly through the clouds, its massive cannons glinting under the twin moons. Down below, the alien guards rushed through the palace corridors. Alarms echoed like thunder. The Queen stood in her observation tower, her silver eyes narrowing as she watched the enormous ship darken the sky. "Whose vessel is it?" she demanded. An officer bowed quickly. "Majesty, the scanners confirm it is human. Unmarked but armed. They are hailing us for contact." The Queen's voice sharpened. "Do they know a human is inside my palace?" The officer hesitated. "We believe so. They demand his return." For a heartbeat, silence. Then the Queen whispered, "They came for Eli." In the lower courtyard, Eli stood beside the princess. They had been teaching her how to move her fingers when the alarm started. She looked up, frightened by the flashing red lights and the deep rumble from above. "What is happening?" she asked, clutching his hand. Eli looked up at the sky and felt his stomach tighten. He knew that sound, the deep, steady pulse of a human battleship. He had heard it once before during the war. He knelt beside the girl. "Stay close to your mother," he said softly. "This isn't your fight." "But they're your people," she said, eyes wide. Eli looked at her glowing metal arm, the one he had built. "Not anymore," he whispered. Moments later, royal guards surrounded him, weapons drawn. Their captain barked, "By order of the Queen, you are to stay inside until commanded otherwise." Eli raised his hands calmly. "I'm not going anywhere." "But you might want to point those at the sky, not at me." The captain hesitated, his voice uncertain. "If the humans attack, we will defend, even against their own." Before Eli could reply, a deep voice echoed through the palace's communication towers. A human voice, amplified across the city. "People of Eryxis," it boomed. "We come in peace. To retrieve our engineer, Eli Voss. Return him immediately or face consequences." Every alien eye turned toward Eli. The guard stiffened, whispering in fear. "He's a spy."
"He called his army." "He betrayed us!"
Eli's jaw clenched. "That's not true," he said, but no one was listening. Suddenly, the princess ran forward, standing between him and the guards. Her voice shook, but it carried through the hall. "He didn't call anyone. He saved me." The guards froze. The Queen entered the hall at that exact moment, her long robe brushing the floor. She had heard it all. "Lower your weapons," she ordered. They obeyed instantly. The Queen walked toward Eli, her face unreadable. Behind her, the great windows shook as thunder rolled from the human ship above. "They demand you," she said quietly. Eli nodded once. "I figured. If I refuse to hand you over, there will be war again," she said. "And if I do, they will kill the man who saved my daughter." He gave a small, tired smile. "That's what humans are good at, forcing impossible choices." The Queen looked at him for a long time. "What will you do?" Eli exhaled slowly. "Let me talk to them. Maybe they'll listen." Her eyes softened. "And if they don't?" "Then you'll have your first human soldier," he said quietly. Minutes later, a bright blue beam of light extended from the sky, a communication link. Eli stepped into the open courtyard, face lit by the glow. "Commander Hale," he said into the beam. "It's me," the voice from above replied coldly. "Eli Voss, you've been missing for months. Headquarters demands your return. You're surrounded by hostiles. We'll extract you by force if necessary." Eli's jaw tightened. "They're not hostiles. They're people. Don't tell me you've gone native," the voice snapped. "I rebuilt a child's arm," Eli said. "Not a weapon. Silence." Then the commander's tone grew darker. Then you've betrayed the human directive. You shared forbidden tech with aliens. You know what that means? Eli's voice was steady. Yeah, it means I remembered what it's like to be human. From the tower above, the Queen watched the scene unfold, her heart twisting. She whispered to her guards, "Ready the shield array, but do not fire unless I command it." Below, Eli stepped back from the beam. He looked at the sky one last time and muttered, "Guess I'm not going home." The princess ran toward him, her metal hand glowing brighter than ever, as if reacting to his heartbeat. She hugged him tightly. "Don't go," she said. "They'll hurt you." Eli knelt, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Hey kid, sometimes doing the right thing hurts, but it's still right." Overhead, the human warship began to descend, slowly like a giant shadow preparing to strike. The air trembled, and the Queen's voice echoed through the palace speakers. "Protect the human. He is under my shield." The soldiers of Erixus turned their weapons skyward, and for the first time in their history, aliens stood ready to defend a human. The air trembled with the sound of engines. Above the glowing city of Erixus, the human warship hung like a dark moon, its cannons slowly turning toward the palace. The sky shimmered with tension. One wrong move and fire would fall again. Inside the royal control chamber, alarms flashed red. Commanders shouted orders. Holograms of battle maps flickered, and soldiers ran to their stations. Yet at the center of it all, the Queen stood still, her face calm but her eyes burning. Her advisor approached, voice trembling. "Majesty, we must strike first. If we hesitate, they will destroy us." The Queen's silver eyes narrowed. "And if we fire first, the peace dies with it." The advisor hesitated. "He is not one of us. You risk our world for a human." Her voice cut through the noise like steel. "That human saved my daughter. I will not betray him now." Outside in the courtyard below, Eli stood under the open sky. The princess clung to his side and alien guards surrounded them. The faint hum of energy shields buzzed around the palace, forming a dome of blue light. Eli looked up at the giant ship. He could almost imagine the faces inside. Men and women he once served with, now calling him traitor. "Guess they never learned to stop aiming first," he muttered. One of the alien soldiers looked at him in confusion. "You are calm, human. Are you not afraid?" Eli gave a half smile. "I've been afraid before. It never helped much." The soldier tilted his head. "You are strange." "Yeah," Eli said softly. "We all are." Inside the throne room, the Queen's daughter entered quietly, despite being told to stay away. She walked straight to her mother and took her hand. "Please," she said, "don't let them hurt him." The Queen looked down at the small hand, half flesh, half glowing crystal, and her heart tightened. "They won't listen to reason," the advisor warned again. "We should surrender the human and save our people." The Queen turned slowly toward him, her tone cold. "Would you have me teach my daughter that mercy is weakness? That gratitude is a crime?" The advisor fell silent. Then the Queen raised her voice clear and firm. "Activate full planetary shields. Prepare defensive barriers, but hold your fire until I command it." Her guards saluted, rushing to obey. She turned back to her daughter. "Stay behind me, little one." Moments later, a communication beam lit the chamber, a bright blue column from the human ship above. The Queen stepped forward into its light. The voice that filled the room was cold and mechanical. "This is Commander Hale of the human fleet. You are harboring a fugitive and violating interstellar law. Return Eli Voss immediately or face destruction." The Queen's voice was steady. "Your so-called fugitive saved my child's life. You will not take him. Then you choose death," the commander replied. The Queen's eyes glowed. "No, I choose honor." She gestured toward the sky. "If you fire upon us, Commander, every system will see it. A human fleet attacking a world that only wanted peace. Do you wish your people to carry that shame?" The comms went silent. Eli watched from the courtyard, eyes fixed on the ship. The cannon still glowed, but no shots came. He whispered to the princess, "She's buying us time." "Can she stop them?" the girl asked. Eli sighed. "I don't know, but she's trying." Inside the human ship, Commander Hale paced in frustration. "She's bluffing," he growled. But one of his officers hesitated. "Sir, the Queen's shields are active. Any attack could trigger a war we're not ready for." The commander slammed his fist on the console. "He's a traitor. We can't just leave him." The officer looked at the screen. at the image of the human standing protectively beside a small alien child. Sir, maybe he isn't. Down on the planet, the Queen stepped closer to the beam, her voice soft but filled with power. Commander, she said, look at what he built. He gave a limb back to a child, not with your weapons, but with your heart's lost knowledge. Is that the act of an enemy? Silence again. Then the communication light flickered once, then faded. The warship's cannons dimmed. Slowly, the massive vessel began to rise, retreating into the clouds. Gasps filled the chamber. The guards looked up in disbelief. The Queen closed her eyes, exhaling slowly, relief and exhaustion mixing into one. Eli watched as the sky cleared. The princess hugged him tightly. They're leaving, she said, her voice bright with hope. He smiled faintly. Looks like your mom won. From the tower above, the Queen stepped out onto the balcony, her eyes meeting his across the courtyard. For a long, silent moment, they simply looked at one another, two beings from different worlds bound by one act of kindness. Then she nodded once, not as a queen, but as someone saying thank you. Eli nodded back. You're welcome, Majesty, he murmured. That night, as peace returned to Arixis, the Queen stood by her daughter's bed, watching her sleep. The glowing arm pulsed softly like a heartbeat. Her advisor entered quietly. You risked everything for him, he said. The Queen smiled faintly. He risked everything first. Outside the palace, the first dawn light spread across the alien sky, calm and new. For the first time in decades, the Queen felt something she thought had died with the war: hope. The warship was gone. The sky above Arixis glowed clear and soft again, painted with gold and violet. The air smelled of rain and fresh wind, peace returning after years of silence. In the courtyard, Eli stood beside the child he had saved. She flexed her glowing metal arm, now moving as smoothly as her other one. Birds, strange glass-feathered creatures, landed nearby, unafraid. Does it still hurt? He asked. The girl smiled. No, it feels like it's part of me. Eli nodded. Good. Then I did something right. For a long moment, neither spoke. The world around them seemed new, reborn. The palace gates opened slowly and the Queen stepped out. Her robe shimmered under the morning light, her crown simple, her face calm. The guards bowed, but she raised her hand. No more bowing today, she said softly. Today we stand as equals. The crowd of villagers that had once feared the human now gathered outside the courtyard, watching in silence. Whispers rippled through them. They had seen everything during the warship, the shield, the Queen's defiance, and they could no longer see Eli as a monster. The Queen stopped in front of him. Her daughter ran to her side, smiling proudly. He fixed me, Mother, she said again, holding up her glowing arm. The Queen looked down at the limb, alive with color and light, then lifted her gaze to Eli. He fixed more than that, she said quietly. Eli looked uneasy. Your people still don't trust mine, he said. The Queen's voice was calm but firm. Then we will teach them. Together. Later that day, a great gathering filled the palace courtyard. Nobles, soldiers, villagers, even the healers, all stood beneath the high banners of Arixis. The Queen stood upon the platform and beside her was Eli, the first human ever to stand there without chains. My people, she began, her voice echoing through the marble halls. We once believed fear kept us safe. We were wrong. She gestured toward Eli. This man, a human, risked his life to save our child. He came not to conquer, but to create. And in doing so, he has reminded us that mercy is not weakness. It is power, the crowd murmured. Some nodded slowly. Others watched silently, unsure. Eli stepped forward, his voice calm. I didn't come here to be a hero, he said. I just fixed what was broken. But maybe that's how peace starts. One small fix at a time. The Queen looked at him and smiled faintly. Then let us begin fixing the rest. She raised her hand toward the sky where the faint traces of the human ship's exhaust still shimmered in the clouds. From this day, Arixis and Earth will no longer hide from one another. We will build bridges, not walls. The crowd fell silent. Then slowly, the first sound of applause began, quiet at first, then louder, until it rolled through the palace like a wave. That evening, as the sun set over the silver plains, Eli worked again in his small workshop. But this time he wasn't alone. Alien engineers stood beside him, watching as he guided them through the strange art of building, blending metal and crystal, human design and alien energy. The princess sat nearby, carving small shapes with her glowing fingers, laughing every time one floated into the air. The queen entered quietly, her presence soft but strong. "They tell me your work never stops," she said. Eli smiled without looking up. "Machines don't fix themselves." She stepped closer, watching him weld two pieces together. "Nor do hearts," she said quietly. He glanced at her, then smiled faintly. "You fixed yours, Majesty." She shook her head. "No, you reminded me how." They stood in silence for a while, the soft sound of tools filling the air. Then the queen spoke again, her tone lighter. "There's something you should see," she said. "Come." Outside the palace, hundreds of lights floated in the air, lanterns rising into the night sky, glowing like stars. Humans and aliens stood side by side, watching them drift upward. The queen looked at Eli. "Every year we release lanterns for those we've lost. Tonight we release them for what we've found." Eli watched the lanterns climb into the heavens. "And what's that?" She smiled. "A chance to begin again." The princess tugged his sleeve, handing him a small lantern. "You should let one go too," she said. Eli held it for a moment, then released it gently. The light floated higher, joining the rest, small but shining bright. As it rose, the queen's voice echoed softly, carried by the wind. From the hands of one human came a limb for a child, and a bridge for two worlds. Eli looked at her, the soft glow of the lanterns reflecting in his eyes. "Guess I finally built something that lasts," he said. The queen smiled. "Yes, Eli Voss, you built hope." And under the alien sky, two worlds that had once feared each other stood together, no longer enemies but partners in a new beginning.